Good evening, Tri-State. Good evening, good evening, good evening. My name is Miguel Anthony Melbourne. And of course, I want to welcome everybody, all our distinguished listeners, wherever in the world you're tuning in from. We thank you. You are listening to Irie Jam Radio in the Tri-State. And if you're in Jamaica, you know you're listening to The Bridge. And so, as the great Irwin would say, we know you have choices. And so, we thank you for tuning in tonight. My name is Miguel Anthony Melbourne. This week, on Melbourne Motivation, my guest is Grammy nominated and platinum music producer John FX. Let me tell you a little bit more. John Alexander Crawford, better known as John FX, is a multi platinum music producer from St. Andrew, Jamaica. The music maven plays the piano, guitar, drums, and bass guitar. He has used his musical genius to create hits for some of the most popular dancehall, reggae, hip hop, and pop artists. A sample of the artists he has worked with include Gyptian, Sizzla, Shabba, Vybz Kartel, Akon, as well as the late great rapper XXXTentacion. JonFx music credits, they're extensive, and his productions are no stranger to the Billboard charts. His 2018 appointment as the governor on the board of the Florida Grammy Chapter has further solidified his musical achievements. Today, he continues to be a pioneer through his company, FX Music Group. And so with that, I say, King, John, FX, welcome to Irie Jam. Welcome to the bridge. How are you feeling today, my brother?
I'm wonderful, my brother. I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful.
Glad to hear that, man. I couldn't be more excited to have this conversation with you. As I stated, we're on the cusp of celebrating Black History Month next month. And so we're going to preempt this by talking to you, who I consider a living legend, right? And so actually, where I want to start is, in many ways, you all represent the quintessential immigrant success story. You activated your passion for music, believed in your abilities, and have achieved at the highest levels. But before we jump into it, take us back a little bit. Which community in Jamaica are you from? And when would you say your love affair with music started?
Well, I was born in Natal Hospital in St. Andrew. My dad, being a guy that's very prepared, he bought us a house in Portmore. I grew up in Portmore most of the time. But we're always in Olympic Way because the church is there in Waterhouse Toil. So we're always there. And we basically being in the music, he's really a true music connoisseur. My dad. His range of music is amazing. I know he played the mouth organ, but there were always instruments around me growing up. My mom would recant me playing the pans around the house. I don't remember playing that stuff at like 18 months. I started remembering stuff at 3. So she told me that's all I used to do, play, and they play all these pans. So I remember at the church they had one organ. Eventually they started to get some instruments, but nobody could play them. There was drums there and stuff. So I would I was already playing my drums at home. So when I played, they're like, "Oh, wow, this guy is amazing. This kid is wow. But it's a gift I believe that God gave me, and it's just a gift, really. Playing the piano, I didn't even remember when I started playing it. There's a keyboard in the house. I was playing it mirrored a little like 3,
Wow.
5. And really what took me was when I used to play at keyboard at Michael Teachers College. My mom, drums I was playing, like I started playing officially at the church. I started at maybe like 9, and I was their official drummer all the way up to like 17 when I left Jamaica. But the piano now, that's truly it's just something that it just is a craft of me just working because it's a little bit more intricate. So my mom lectured at Michael Teachers College again in Jamaica there, Marasco Road, Crossroad area. And I'm Millicent Crawford, my mom. And I would play, there was these abandoned pianos there on the premises. And then there was also the really good sounding ones, because Michael's a university now. There was
Yeah.
the Baldwin, the guy, the music department guy, Mr. I forgot his name. I remember his name, but he would allow me to play. A child, not supposed to touch these things. He'll open the lock of the piano and he'll allow me to play this piano all the time. And it was something that I really truly appreciate. I played the same thing over and over. Then when he told me that anything I could sing, I could play. So I remember I used to play Mary the Little Lamb, and he says, "What do you know?" And there was a record by I think Marx called "Whatever You Are, Whatever You Do, I Will Be Right Here Waiting For You." So I sang it, and he says, "Play it." So I go dun 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 dun, and I played it. So I played that record for maybe like 5 years straight every day. You know, I started playing all the records, and the left hand came in, and the right hand, and that was the piano. So I used the same technique for the guitars and the bass and everything else.
Wow, it's a powerful story, man. Thank you for sharing that bit. You know, I can imagine that there's some youth listening right now, and they hear themselves and see themselves in your story. They're in church right now playing. You know, they heard you call the community, and so to know that you have made it to the heights of achievement that you have, man, some kids just got filled with a whole lot of confidence. Thank you for sharing that. I want to jump to, you know, many of us who are not in the music business, what happens inside of a studio, it's a complete mystery. We you know, the artist goes in and sometimes magic comes out and sometimes it's not magic. So can you just put into scope for us, what is the actual role of a music producer in the process of making a great song? What's that role?
Oh man, that's amazing. Great question. I have been I will do a segment where I'm going to explain beat maker and a producer. I would say 80% of everyone who's called a producer, especially in America, are beat makers.
Okay.
And I can show you. I was once a beat maker too. I hired musician, making a bunch of beats. I was a beat maker for many, many years. When I started to become a producer, not when they title you as a producer, because America gives the title of the guy who make the beat a producer. That's not really what a producer is. Producer is a Clive Davis, Berry Gordy, you know what I mean? Or even Jamaica, Coxsone Dodd. Coxsone Dodd doesn't play any instruments, studio one. But the producer carries the entire creation of the thing and he puts it together, Quincy Jones. And that's what I became over, I would say, maybe the last 5, 6, 7 years. But prior to that, I was just a beat maker also. So that's the big difference because of the hip hop culture. The guy who make the beat, they told him that he's a producer. So it's one of the reasons why the quality of the music is steadily declining. Because you're thinking that I produce this record, but you're producing, you know nothing about keys, you don't know anything about chords. If you can't play something, you sample it, and you just you take out a lot of the musical creative composition out of the music because you're not a producer who understands that, okay, let me hire a keyboard player. Let me get a trumpet player here. And this is the reason why there's so many copyright infringements in modern day music. Because it's beat makers who don't really understand the musical structure, you know. So
I'm so overjoyed to hear you start by saying, you know what, I'm going to put together a lesson, a segment, a class on this because it's truly missing. And you know why? Sometimes we hear news stories where they're saying they're taking away the arts program, they're taking away the music program. That's a problem. But that's where we need pioneers like you to come back and say, listen, this is what's really this is what producing is, right? Thank you for sharing that. You know, one of my favorite quotes, you know, from one of our great musical cultural icons, Mr. Bob Marley. You know, he said one good thing about music: when it hits you, you feel no pain, right? And you've been one of the best doctors over the years, ensuring music lovers feel no pain. But the truth is, at the end of the day, as end listeners, we lack the knowledge. We don't know how to articulate the elements, right? We just know, that sound good or that does sound good, right? So what I'm asking that is, through your producing lens, give us a brief tutorial, right? For example, what are some of the key elements, foundational instruments or melodies or tempos that separate a reggae from a dancehall to a R&B to a hip hop? What's the differences we should be listening for?
So back to where we say, why I appreciate every form of the music, the beat makers, the producers, because there's still a vibe. You know, there's still that vibe that we can't leave. I remember working with a very prominent DJ. You know, we used to be partners, and he knew nothing about keys, but he just always told me, "Yo, it gotta feel right." I said, "Huh?" But it's out of key. You know, so when he told me that, I was like, "Oh, big up DJ Obsession." You know, because that's where you know, what I mean, when I was there in New York, we did that first record, the Gun Session. It was him. He was just, you know, nothing about keys. And he's like, "Yo, it just gotta feel right." And I was like, "But you know, it's out of key." It's like, "But it feels right," and the record goes big. So there's that feel where you have to get rid of the theory and the stuff out of the way. So now to the reggae now. I love to explain to people about this reggae and this dancehall, right? Um, Reggae is the genre, right? Including rocksteady, ska, and there was mental before that. You know, there's a song I'm putting out called Dancehall History with all of that in it, and it goes all the way down to today's artists. From you're talking from Prince Buster, you come all the way down. You know, it's a really good song. I'll put it out. So they when the elders hear you call, "Oh, this is the new dancehall," a lot of the elders are a little bit upset because in their mind they're like, "But Alton Ellis was the music of the dancehall in the 60s, you know what I mean? And in the 70s, you know what I mean? These were our dancehall." So you say, "Oh, that's reggae because it's old, and then this is dancehall because it's new." So the original thing was that was the music that was played in the dancehall. You know what I mean? When I look at the elders, when I ask them questions, and I say, "Hey, tell me about Baba Boom, Boom Boom Festival, Boom Boom." That's big dancehall song. They drop Guinness and they do the same thing, you know, and gun salute over that, and that was festival song, you know what I mean? So because it's the dip that they used to, "People are dancing," and the bass line, you know, so that was their movado, you know. So when I explain to people, I say, "Listen, Bob Marley really was almost like a Maxi Priest or a Shaggy. That wasn't what the streets listened to. The streets always listened to Dennis Brown, the Cool Ruler. Even Bob Marley was prominent. He was not a song that he stopped him playing the dancer. You know what I mean? At the time, it was Dennis Brown, Cool Ruler. You know, people get dressed, Turleen and Clarks, to go to these parties. So, sound-wise now, what I recognize is when I coming up in my era of music, I used to observe at the studios, especially at Caveman Studio. I used to observe the Steely and Cleavage, a lot of the Barry Hammond stuff. All the Barry Hammond stuff was drum machining. You know that? Never get
no idea.
understand it. That's a keyboard bass. When you hear a bass line not with a lot of dynamic in it, that's all keyboard bass. Pulling up a resistor, the whole thing is drum machine. And they'll add a little saxophone here and there and a few other stuff. All of the early Sizzla stuff, everything is drum machine. But it was played by musicians. That's the difference.
That's the difference.
The difference is when a keyboard, like if you watch Steel and Cleavage, have a little segment on YouTube where they were making the duck rhythm. They're making the whole thing online. So when you see him play the bass line, he goes on the drum because he's a drummer. So when he plays the drum machine, he knows that when you play the drum machine and the drummer, he knows that he's supposed to be able to play that live. You know?
Yeah.
You know that when you play that drummer, you got to make room in it to roll. So he's playing the drum machine with that in mind. That's how he's doing it in his head because he knows he's a drummer. He knows he can't keep that hi-hat running because you can't run the hi-hat when you're rolling on the drum. The two hands come off it. You know what I mean? So even with the bass line, when they're playing that same bass line for duck, they go doom 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 doom. It's something what the bass player would be doing, but it's keyboard. And you play the phrase. So you put these elements in it. So when I'm listening to these guys, when I watch them, like I used to go to mixing lab and just watch them. You know what I mean? Watch Sly Robbie and I watch them and say, these are real musicians who know how to use a drum machine in today's industry now. So that was the reggae. The reggae, people say, oh, it's live instruments and it's da-da-da-da-da. Live instruments is the best way. But when you're playing the drum machine and you understand music called rudiments and regiments, it makes it much easier. For instance, Cylinder, all the R&B stuff, ever cross your mind every time. That's all drum machine and the keyboard. You know, and the bass is keyboard. The bass is keyboard too. But these are real music guys. The Terry Williams and the Baby Faces and these people. They are music guys who know that. Okay, You can't play the kick drum like that because it's gonna clash with the bass. They know the separation of sound when they're using even a drum machine. So when I see today, it's something that I would show the young children. I say, listen, you have to still understand just the basics at least. Because then when you hear a track, the reason why the tracks are not lasting long, as hard as they are now, they're not standing the test of time like 20, 30 years. It's just 6 months, or if it's really running the place, maybe a year. You know what I mean? And the reason why, because it lacks musical elements. So the tracks are not breathing properly.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like a loop. You take a loop off the internet. It gets your ears tired too. You know what I mean? So when you listen to a record like I want
the music's not breathing.
It's not breathing.
The music's not breathing.
I wonder what I seen a segment with Timbaland and Kanye West in the studio. And Timbaland was playing, Kanye West was playing that record. Until the day I die, I'ma touch the sky. And the kick drums. And he played it for Timbaland, and Timbaland said, yo, listen, your kicks are too busy. Your kicks are too busy. He says, yo, you need to give room for the bass. You know what I mean? So, the bass plays its thing, and then the drum plays its thing. Bob Marley's band, the Wailers band, they have a perfect formula where the family man, the bass player, Aston Barrett, his brother is a drummer, Carlton Barrett. Bob Marley's band is Aston and Carlton. And what they do, they play answer bass. So they question and they answer each other. That's how Bob Marley's bass is not the typical reggae bass. Reggae bass lines is straight. That's how reggae bass plays.
All right.
So Bob Marley bass player, he plays answer bass. So Bob Marley goes man to man, it's so unjust. I go children don't know.
Hey.
You know what I mean?
You see what I'm saying? We don't know none of this. We don't know. We have no idea at all. We listen, we just know that it feels good, like you said, it sounds good. But everything you just said, we don't know how to put this thing into scope, right? And so thank you so much.
I used to bash a lot of the younger producers in Jamaica for years, especially living in New York. But I meet them and I talk to them and they just don't know.
Right.
They're trying the best that they know, you know. They just don't know. You know what I mean? But having the father that I have and having the musical scope that I grew up. Remember, I grew up listening to a lot of Neil Diamond in Jamaica. You know? There's a certain time in Jamaica I didn't even like reggae music. You know what I mean? I wasn't a fan of none of the new stuff, the Ninja Man, the Super Cat. I didn't like it. If it wasn't Desmond Decker, if it wasn't Toots, I wasn't interested. I used to do my homework to Toots. You know what I mean? That's what I used to do my homework to. It's vinyl. You know what I mean? Going to primary school, Denhamtown Primary, you know, our micro practicing. So that's the element where I said I have to show some of the young people these songs. I have to teach them just to understand the rudiments so you can move forward to the next.
You know, that's what I was gonna. I'm glad you said that, and you're touching on it. I was gonna ask you that, right? Because I the way I think about just the importance of music in our culture, it's kind of I think of it like the Olympics. Like if music and putting out quality music and having great artists and lyrics and the feel, if it was like the Olympics, Jamaica would get all the gold. That's the way I see it. But there seems to be a missing element where the rate at which we're putting out music, that rate is not the same in terms of the international acclaim and recognition and reward. So there seems to be a missing gap. What is that gap, and what do you want the young artists to know right now? Hey, you're on both sides. What do you want them to know?
I spoke about this some years ago in Jamaica, and it wasn't well received. And I said I wasn't going to say it again. I'm still going to say.
Appreciate that.
We need mixing goes a long way, you know, in Jamaica. Lyrics goes a long way. Melody, productions, and the choice of drum sounds. The choice of drum sounds. So one of the things that's happening, people would say, oh, we just use the same equipment that they have. You know what I mean? And a lot of guys in Jamaica always try to, you know, come with this issue. I said, listen, they were using the same instruments. Donovan Germain and these guys and Tony Kelly and they were using the same instruments as the ones that the modern day people are using. But the difference between them and you using the same drum machine sounds today is they were going into the studios, into mixing lab, into Anchor, and they were spreading the multi-track on the board. You know what I mean? And Stephen Stanley or Chemist or Bulby or somebody was going to sit there and mix that record properly. I said it a long time. And very prominent people in Jamaica goes, I said, listen, I said it back then. And then today now, I have over 10 platinum records, and I'm still saying the same thing back then. The end frequency needs to be balanced properly. So if you should take the new dancer, Crocodile thing, first thing, take that record, go to mixing lab, producer or beat maker, go take that multi-track and go to mixing lab and get it mixed properly on the big board. Because the sound that's coming out of Jamaica naturally is a much more warmer sound. It's fatter sound because there's a science to it, and a lot of different things. 50 cycle, we're still using 50 cycle, which is 220 current. America uses 160, 120 current, which is 60 cycle, 120 voltage. That's what they use in America. It has something to do with the sound. What happens is, I learned on the masters. So I didn't grow up with the ego of, yo, I do my thing, I'm not running into nobody. We come from the era where you go to studios and you sit there and you wait humbly. You know what I mean? Just to be seen. You know what I mean? So you could say, hey, Mr. Gussie Clark, is it possible you could mix this record for me? You know what I mean? He may ignore you, you know what I mean? Or you may have to save your money. Or you might say, you know what? Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it for you. So that's the trick, is where there's no masters handing on the baton to any youngsters anymore in our dancehall music. It's just not happening. There was always, and again, think about it. You remember the Wayne Wonders and the Buju Bantons and the stuff? Their producers were big men, They weren't kids, They were older men with experience who understood sound and understood frequency and understood that, hey, you can't sing that. I mean, they'll have many of our melodies were, taken from bigger international songs and stuff. So now today, these youngsters, they're coming up with this thing out of their brains, they're thinking, but it all sounds the same.
All right.
Because their musical spectrum is very small. So my first thing I tell them, if you can't go up to Mixing Lab or up to Tough Gang or up to Big Yard and do anything like that, start listening to some other kind of music. Forget the hip hop. Hip hop is great. You want to listen to something that you're not comfortable. Get out your comfort zone. Start listening to classical music. Start to like it. Not listen to it just, I have to listen to it because I want to be better. But start to like it or to see where the people came from, some jazz. Because when you do that, your melody structure opens up. Right. And the way how you start to learn how to let music breathe. Because if you're the reason why dancehall has this thing called dancehall trap, and the reason why Afrobeat has taken the lead, is because it has taken the lead. Dancehall, this dancehall trap, you can't look at a student as your teacher. Right. Hip hop, reggae is the teacher. You know what I mean?
Hold on, X, because we're coming up on the time, and I can't have you leave without a couple things. One, I want you to tell us what is to come from FX Music Group. And second, clearly by now our listeners understand that we're talking to a maestro, a visionary. And as where you sit, I know you're constantly thinking about pushing our culture forward and just pushing music in general forward. So just tell us what's to come quickly. And then as well, please tell our listeners, where can they connect with you? Where can they learn more? Where can they follow your movement? Give us that fast.
Yeah, so sometimes you could spread yourself thin quickly. So let me get through it. I believe that there is one artist that he's made the, you call it the tree, the family tree of music. There's always rivalry in music. There was, Beanie Man, Bounty Killer and stuff. From the Beanie Man camp, I can't really...
Well, X, listen, we have about a minute left. I don't want them to understand where...
I'm using one of the main artists, you know what I mean? I'm releasing a record, with a reggae record with Vybz Kartel and Michael Rose. We just mixed it. I'm using that as a template for others to follow. It has no cursing in it. And this is Vybz Kartel. No cursing in it. It's reggae. It's live bass. It's solidarity feel. It's slang rabbit bass. And that record we're releasing. So look out for that one.
I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you again. You are listening to JonFx, one of the pioneers, one of the maestros in the music. I hope you enjoyed it. We are going to be back next week. Erwin will be back, but I hope you enjoyed this segment of Melbourne Motivation. We will catch you next week. JonFx, thank you greatly, my brother.
My brother Miguel, thank you so much. Thank you, Ari Jam. Thank you.